Welcome friends to another r/maliciouscompliance video. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. And our first story of the day is by Hello is Clay. Not putting in enough hours, you say? A few years ago, I worked as a field engineer for a call recording company. I worked primarily with 911 agencies and would integrate recording systems with radio and phone systems to record the calls and radio traffic. If you've heard a 911 call on the news from one of the few states along the East Coast, there's a very good chance I built and installed that system. As part of our company's policy, we would do preventative maintenance every 6 months. This was where we went on-site, tested everything was functioning properly, and showed some value in our maintenance contracts through FaceTime with the customers. After some years, I had climbed the ladder to being the lead engineer, installer, and trainer. I trained most of the other engineers and techs within the company along with performing my normal duties. I had also installed the vast majority of the systems I was doing maintenance on and was extremely familiar with them. A maintenance visit took me around an hour, where it took the new guys 4 to 5 hours, and I would usually knock out 2 to 3 maintenance visits in a single day. I had literally triple the numbers as the next closest tech. As often happens, eventually the company was bought out. The new owner came in and presented himself as very metrics focused. The problem was that he didn't understand what we did in the field, so his metrics weren't always good ones. Eventually, I got written up and put on a performance improvement plan. The reason? Days I didn't have to drive far, I would finish 3 maintenance visits and still be home in less than 6 hours. Again, my actual performance metrics were legitimately triple the next closest tech, and most days, I worked well over 8 hours when driving was included, but instead of looking at those metrics, he used time as his only metric and focused solely on the shortest days. And unfortunately for me, I objectively worked less time than anyone else. Now for the malicious compliance. Instead of scheduling the way I had previously, I started scheduling to ensure I hit 8 hours a day, every day. Previously, I had started at a customer site at 9 a.m., whether it was 1 hour away or 5, so I would get up at whatever time that day required. I would also try to knock out multiple customers in the same area on the same trip to save driving time on longer days. Some days, I would drive 12 hours total, knock out 3 maintenance visits, taking another few hours, and have a total day of 15 plus hours. Afterwards, I left for sites at exactly 8 a.m. and tried to get home at exactly 5 p.m. For those sites that were 5 hours away, can't do them without a hotel room. Instead of costing a full tank of gas and a single day's wages for 3 clients, it now costs the company the same amount of gas, 3 to 4 nights in a hotel, and multiple days of my salary. For closer sites that I didn't need a hotel, I would make sure I didn't leave too soon to get home at exactly 5 p.m. So I would sit in a server room playing games on my phone for a few hours. If sites were close enough, I would still try to knock out 2 or sometimes 3. But if time was the metric, I was going to make sure I worked as closely to 8 to 5 as possible without doing anything detrimental to the customers. Overall, I was trying to make a point to show that while I may have been meeting the time metric, I was actually doing less work by meeting that metric. We did employee reviews every quarter, so when my next review came around 3 months later, I tried to bring it up. Instead, the new owner praised me for working harder and ignored that I was doing significantly less work. During that meeting, I tried showing that it was costing the company more, and I was achieving less by meeting that metric instead of an actual performance metric. But somehow, despite my spreadsheets showing costs, site visits, completed maintenance, and everything else, he refused to understand it. He kept praising how my work ethic had improved, and didn't want me to change anything or go back, so I didn't change a thing and coasted at that job for the next few years. If you had to work an 8-hour workday, where at least for half of it you would be able to sit around, play on your phone, play games and whatnot, would you personally enjoy that? Or would trying to kill time like that every day, all day get old really quickly for you? Let me know in the comments down below. This next story is by Stitch Converse. Keep picking me for a random locker search? Meet my underwear. Many years ago, I worked for an outdoor activity center / playland in the retail department. Throughout the park, there were many different shops that we manned, and I absolutely loved working there despite it being hard work for little pay. One day, I had a run-in with a manager who seriously berated me in front of the entire team, along with others from different departments. I was advised by a manager from a different team to make a formal complaint, which I did. Others came out with similar complaints and said manager was advised to find employment elsewhere, but not sacked. Now, unbeknownst to me, I triggered the chain of events that would lead to me leaving the company. Now, before the main story, there's some background info that is relevant to my malicious compliance. There were a few rules in place that were designed to prevent theft, including no more than 10 British pounds to be allowed on the shop floor, which was to be checked before your shift. Anything over this must be declared to management and left in your locker, and all staff had to agree to random locker or pocket searches. In the 2 years I'd worked here, I had never been picked for a random search. There were around several hundred employees, so the odds were incredibly slim. As soon as our disgraced manager left, I suddenly found myself picked at random for a search. This involved turning out my pockets, removing my shoes and socks, and then being escorted to the locker room to empty the contents out. Nothing was found, so I was sent back to the shop floor. The following week, I was again picked at random for a search, which again turned up nothing. Rumors were soon doing the rounds that I had upset my department's remaining management team after instigating the action against my former manager, and they were going to force me out using any means necessary. I realized that I needed to act, so I started job hunting and then began my malicious compliance. I started taking a backpack to work filled with 20 British pounds in pennies. Every morning, I declared the amount in my locker as required, and sure enough, after a couple of days, I was once again selected for my weekly random search. I got paid to watch a security guard and supervisor count 2,000 pennies. As expected, I passed said search and off I went. This happened a second time with now 30 pounds in pennies, and I decided to up my game. At the start of the following week, I patiently awaited my random search with glee, knowing what awaited them. The day soon arrived and off I was marched to the lockers, ready for their treat. I lift out my backpack and pass it to the security guard and supervisor, who dive straight in without any gloves. Oh, how they retched as they discovered what was in there. I had several pairs of my period-soaked pants waiting in there especially for them. They were gingerly laid on the floor beside my bag as they counted my bag of pennies. The smell from the pants was unreal. They'd been festering in there for days in anticipation. Once again, the search revealed nothing, and off to work I went. After that, I was not picked for another search again. I left after a couple more weeks to a new job, and keeping in touch with some people, I discovered that a new rule was introduced that tried dictating what you could and couldn't take to work with you. This soon led to a mass walkout of staff, and after a year, the place shut down due to unrelated matters. Although this is a really good malicious compliance, I feel like in the end, it almost isn't satisfying enough. What I mean by that is they were doing this whole charade just to try and get you to leave or fire you. So you kind of torture them in a way, get them to get off of your case, and then you leave anyways, kind of giving them exactly what they wanted. Our next story is by Lazy Poco. Do you want me to look professional or not? I guess not. I served in the army for about a decade and was maliciously compliant a lot. I didn't know the term for it back then and have since forgotten most of the stories I would otherwise have, but I have at least one that has stood the test of time. I was at a training course called BLC, which is basically a class to learn some tasks required or expected of a people of a certain rank. I was in the army for a lot longer than most people before finally going to this course. Because of that, I had a lot more knowledge than anyone in my classroom, and very possibly more than any of the other trainees, about 150 people. We're about a week into the 2 weeks of training. We come outside in the dark for early morning PT. We do this every morning except Sundays. We all had a Sunday off. It is a requirement in the army to be clean-shaven in order to keep a professional appearance. Now, I have thick facial hair, it grows fast, and I have sensitive skin, so shaving sucks for me. I know from experience that I get a better shave after PT, between the sweating and the shower after it tends to go better for me. And in order to keep the professional appearance, that's what I do. I use an electric razor before PT, so I don't have a full beard, but it isn't close enough to be professional. Then I use a regular razor after PT. If I shave before PT, I have a 5 o'clock shadow by noon and a full beard by the end of day. Plus, I figure if there's going to be a part of the day where my hair is a bit long, I figure when it's dark out is the best time. One morning, during PT, one of the instructors pulls me aside and asks if I've shaved that morning. I told him what was going on and explained my reasoning. He doesn't accept this and he writes me a counseling statement. In this context, a counseling statement is a formal reprimand that, unless you get a bunch of them, they don't really matter. That said, because I was in a school setting, this counseling statement took me out of the running for the Army equivalent of valedictorian. This aggravated me because I had perfect scores up to this point and spent a lot of time helping the other soldiers because I didn't really need the practice myself. I get told I have to shave every day before PT. I listen to them, and just like I had warned, I start ending the day with too much hair. I get another counseling statement. If you get 3 counseling statements during this training, you get kicked out for not shaving. I made my case to my instructors, and once again, they didn't care. They told me to maintain a professional appearance. I had to shave 4 times a day, which is freaking insane and would ruin my face. I tell them this, and they say that without a medical shaving profile, medical exemption, that I have to shave 4 times. Finally, we come to the malicious compliance. Almost. Shaving profiles are fairly common in the Army, but are almost always only given to black guys. Black people get bad bumps and razor burns on their faces more often than white people for reasons that I don't know and haven't bothered to look up. To give you an idea of the rarity of white people with shaving profiles, over my more than a decade of service, I saw a total of 0 white people with shaving profiles. Until I call my home unit and request to speak with a medic. I tell him what's happening, and he writes and emails me my profile stating that I can have facial hair below a certain length. I think it was 1/8 of an inch due to a skin condition. On some people, that much hair isn't crazy, but with my thick dark hair, it's very obvious. I go to PT in the morning, not shaven, and get pulled aside again. I get asked if I shaved. I say no and pull out my shaving profile. The guy reads it, hands it back, clearly upset, and says, okay. The entire day and the rest of training, I get confused and angry looks from leadership. I get stopped regularly and asked what's going on. I'm telling you, white guys don't get shaving profiles. The highlight was at graduation when all the really high-ranking people show up. I have sergeant majors, colonels, etc. staring me down. I see them talking to our instructors pointing at me. God darn, did that feel good. I hope I looked professional enough for them. A little extra, I ended up getting 5 total counseling statements and somehow still graduated. People in the comments have speculated that the reason it primarily affects black people is that their hair's naturally curly, and oftentimes when you shave it, the hair will curl around and grow back into the skin, and that'll cause a lot of the bumps and irritation. So I definitely learned something new today. And our final story of the day is by Cassie Bear 1. Don't work until I show you how to do it properly. Background: I work maintenance in a school board, and every summer we bust our butts using heavy machines to scrub the top layer of dirty, damaged wax off the classroom floors, and then reapplying fresh wax. For most schools, this is a full summer job, working full shifts from the time the kids leave until they return to get everything done. Each school has a head of maintenance, and each group of schools, 1 high school and 5 to 10 elementary schools, has a supervisor of maintenance. Now on to the malicious compliance. Supervisor was a bit of a jerk who thought he knew the best way to do every job. If he didn't like you or felt a perceived slight from you, he was vindictive too. Well, the week before the summer break began, he calls all the maintenance staff into a meeting, during which he informs them that no one is to do anything with the floors until I show them how to scrub and wax them properly. Fair, I guess. Some supervisors are weird about having specific methods they like seeing to get things done. Maybe his method is better than how we've been taught. Except directly after uttering this edict, supervisor goes on vacation for 3 weeks. Of course, not wanting to disobey him, the maintenance staff did exactly what they'd been instructed to. Nothing. About a week into this, the manager of maintenance, the supervisor's boss, showed up and was flabbergasted to find the maintenance team just sitting with no work being done. When he asked them why the heck they weren't working, they told him what supervisor had told them. Manager told them to go start working, and he would deal with the supervisor. Supervisor was moved to a different school area after that. You gotta love that the solution to a bad supervisor is to relocate him somewhere else. That'll surely fix the problem, just a whole other group of people having a brand new headache. But with that being said, that's a wrap on another bunch of stories here today. As always, if you guys have any favorite videos of this bunch, let me know which one in the comments down below and why. And if you enjoyed the stories in general, if you could subscribe to this channel, it'd mean a lot to me. I make these videos daily, and it's by far and away the best way to support my channel. So no matter what you did, whether it was subscribing or liking, leaving a comment, I just appreciate the heck out of you guys. And as always, I'll be back tomorrow with even more stories right here on the Storytime channel.